Have you ever wondered how the British managed to capture India, a land far away from their home? Let's journey back to the turn of the 17th century, when the British interest in India first sparked. It was the year 1600, a time when the allure of exotic spices, textiles, and other luxuries from the East was irresistible. In the heart of London, a group of merchants formed the East India Company, a venture that would forever alter the course of history. This wasn't just any company. Queen Elizabeth herself granted a royal charter giving the company exclusive rights to trade with the East Indies. This was a significant move, marking Britain's entry into the competitive race for Eastern commerce. The British, however, were not initially interested in ruling India. They saw it as a trading partner, a source of immense wealth waiting to be tapped. The East India Company was their key to unlocking this treasure. Thus began the British interest in India, not as a colony, but as a lucrative trading partner. The Battle of Plassey in 1757 marked a significant turning point in the British conquest of India. It was a battle of intrigue, strategy, and raw power. In the heart of Bengal, the British East India Company, led by the shrewd and ambitious Robert Clive, faced off against the formidable Nawab of Bengal. On the surface, it seemed a mismatch. The Nawab's forces dwarfed those of the British, with his army boasting a strength nearly 50 times that of the British troops. The odds were heavily stacked against Clive and his men. Yet, the outcome of this pivotal battle would surprise many. The British were not just relying on their military might. Instead, they harnessed the power of deception and political maneuvering. Clive, a master strategist, understood that he could not win this battle through force alone. He needed to exploit the weaknesses within the Nawab's camp. That was the doctrine of lapse. Now, let's delve into what this doctrine was all about. Introduced by Lord Dalhousie, the then Governor-General of India, in the mid-19th century, the doctrine of lapse was a policy that allowed the British to annex any Indian state whose ruler was deemed incompetent or died without a male heir. The policy was named so because the ruling rights of a state were said to lapse in the absence of a legitimate heir. This policy was a strategic move by the British, as it enabled them to seize control of vast territories without the need for direct military action. It was a win-win for them. They were able to increase their territories, and they did it under the guise of providing stable governance. However, this policy was met with widespread resistance and resentment. Indian rulers, their subjects, and even the princely states saw it as a blatant disregard for their traditions and sovereignty. Many states, like Satara, Jhansi, and Nagpur, fell into the British lap due to this doctrine, leading to a significant increase in British territories in India. One can't help but acknowledge the cunning of the British Empire. They used policies like the doctrine of lapse to systematically dismantle the power structures in India, paving the way for their complete control over the subcontinent. The doctrine of lapse significantly increased British territories in India, often against the will of the local rulers. Major uprising against British rule, but its failure only further solidified the British hold on India. The mutiny was triggered by a variety of factors. One of the primary causes was the introduction of new rifle cartridges that were rumored to be greased with pig and cow fat, offensive to both Muslim and Hindu soldiers. This, coupled with the general discontent about the British disregard for Indian traditions and culture, sparked a rebellion that spread like wildfire across northern and central India. The revolt was a massive one, involving not just sepoys but also civilians. From Meerut to Delhi, from Kanpur to Lucknow, the rebellion saw intense fighting, acts of unprecedented valor, and brutal retaliations. However, the sepoys lacked a unified command and a clear strategy, which ultimately resulted in their failure. Following the suppression of the mutiny, the British government took drastic steps to avoid a recurrence. The rule of the British East India Company was abolished, and India was placed directly under the Crown, marking the beginning of the British Raj. The army was reorganized to include a higher proportion of British soldiers, ensuring that the sepoys could not rebel again. The Sepoy Mutiny was a turning point in Indian history. It was a revolt that shook the British Empire to its core. But ironically, it only tightened the British grip on India. Despite resistance, the British managed to quell the rebellion and in doing so, took complete control of India. By the late 19th century, the British had effectively captured India, ruling it as a part of their empire. It all began with the spark of interest in the 17th century when the British first set foot on Indian soil, drawn by the allure of trade and exotic riches. The pivotal Battle of Plassey marked the start of British territorial conquest. The clever manipulation of local politics and alliances led the East India Company to a decisive victory, solidifying their hold on Bengal. Then came the doctrine of lapse, a policy that allowed the British to annex any Indian princely state under their control if the ruler was deemed incompetent or died without a male heir. This policy resulted in the annexation of several key regions, cementing British control. Finally, the Sepoy Mutiny and its aftermath led to the formal transfer of power to the British Crown. The British capture of India was a complex process of political maneuvering, military conquest, and economic exploitation, shaping the history of India in profound ways.